Hi guys, welcome to our new channel, Educated Black Men. Today we're talking about a pretty heavy topic, but let's introduce the players first. I'm David Clark.
I'm Walter Bryant.
Ashton Illich here.
Cedric Harris.
Armand Gasparini.
And Cedric, why don't you go ahead and inform people about, obviously, what they should probably already know about what happened this week.
So this week's been pretty hectic with news involving police shootings, involving black men. The first one was, I believe, Wednesday morning in Baton Rouge with Alton Sterling. He was selling CDs when someone called the cops and said he had a gun and was threatening people. And they showed up, tackled him, wrestled him to the ground, and shot him 5 times in the chest and the back, claiming he had a gun. Still no gun has been found. And then later, Wednesday night in, I believe, Minnesota, there was Philando Castile, who was pulled over for allegedly having a taillight not being working correctly, when later, but taillight wasn't working, got pulled over. He mentions to the officer that he was a concealed permit carrier, and when the officer asked for the information, he was going to give it to him, and then the officer proceeded to shoot him in front of his girlfriend, in front of his 4-year-old daughter, and on Facebook Live for the whole world to see, until Facebook took it down, but then they put it back up. And then that was followed by Thursday, a protest, one of several protests, but the most prominent being in Dallas, where a sniper started taking shots at police officers and killed several, injured a bunch more. And then a drone, a robot, was used to take out, blow up the shooter, the sniper, the alleged sniper, and finish what was a siege on the Dallas Police Department. So that's basically what has happened in this week. It was a span of just a couple days, really.
Yeah.
But so that's basically what happened.
So obviously, we all have tons of feelings on this, hence why we're here. We normally do a different kind of podcast, but we decided it was time to talk about something a little more real. So, floor is open. Walter, do you want to talk about how you feel first?
Well, I don't know. Like, I'm not the most emotional person on the planet.
You are a rock.
But I, not so much, like, Alton Sterling, I was mad. I was just, I was like, another time this has happened, and another thing I'm going to have to explain to my kids about being black in America. And then Philando Castile happened, and I think for the first time in probably like 10 years, I was crying. It was weird. It was like, because I don't cry about anything. So to wake up and I'm watching this happen, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? We all live in a world where supposedly the American dream is something that we can all attain, and then I'm looking at this and I don't even know that people really think of us as American, or even as people. So, I mean, and then I have children and they're getting older, and I have to explain this to them, and what the hell kind of world am I leaving for them when I go? I mean, because eventually they got to take over. And when they take over, what are they taking over? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, that was where I started at, and I don't have an answer for that right now.
Ashton?
I believe that, for me at least, when I saw those shootings, I couldn't help but think of my little brother, because I don't have any kids, and he's, the closest thing I have to someone that's going to inherit the world after me. So I'm so worried about him going out, because he's 16 now, and he gets looked at a certain way because he's almost 6 feet tall, and he's a big black kid, and he doesn't have the tact to speak in a certain way to another adult, the way that I do, the way that you guys do. So he can't get out of certain situations, and it can so easily become something else for him. The same that would happen to Trayvon Martin.
Right.
Easily get mistaken for being in the wrong place, but really belonging there.
Yeah.
And being, in another situation like this. And I think it's just a burden that we carry as black men. We have to be extra cautious. We have to be 7 steps ahead in order to make it with our lives, and it's scary.
Yeah, we're always having to disarm. Like, for example, I usually wear a lot of nerd shirts because it's a very easy way of letting people know you're not a threat. And I'm sure we've all had that moment when we were younger, when we hit about 10, 11, 12, when our parents said, at this point they look at it differently. I remember back in high school, I got in a fight in 8th grade. Totally, I was in the right, did it in front of teachers, but they didn't move until I fought back. And my mom had to tell me, David, I know that you're 12, but now they look at you as a man, and you have to act as a man. Which I know you were saying, with your son being 10, it's time to have that talk.
Yeah.
But so but Cedric, how do you?
Well, I remember waking up Wednesday morning, and I woke up, and I walk out my room, and my dad has the news on, and the very first thing I see that day is the police shooting Alton Sterling, and the first thing I think of is he looks like me. I'm 6'3", well over 250 pounds. Alton Sterling was a big guy. And I was like, okay. I was upset. They shot another black guy. I'm sure they think he had a gun. I don't know why they shot him, but they shot him. Okay, so later on I find out he sold CDs. I used to buy CDs from people like that. I used to sell CDs in high school because I was trying to make some extra money on the side because I needed to make money. And then that night before I go to bed, I hear about Philando Castile. And I'm like, it hasn't even been 24 hours. Like, the day isn't even over. And in 2 different parts of the country, black men were stopped and shot for no reason. He had a broken taillight, but we find out later that the cop saw he had a wide nose, and he got stopped. Then he said, I have a weapon on me and I'm licensed to carry it, and was still shot. We find out later a homeless man called 911. A homeless man called 911, and a man had to die because training didn't kick in, and they couldn't calm down a large black man, so they had to tackle him and shoot him instead of tase him or hit him or pepper spray him or hit him with a flashlight.
You bring up an interesting point when you said training didn't kick in. I think that shows that there was a lot of fear. They have a lot of fear for us as a people, and it becomes even more clear when you examine instances when they come across white or non-black felons or criminals, and they're able to apprehend them non-violently without killing.
Well, there's that video of
the
white guy who was throwing punches at those 2 cops in that restaurant. And, first they tried to wrestle him, hand to hand. But when that didn't work, they went for the taser. And the dude still punched him and ran outside. I don't know if they caught him. He looked like he was gone. The dude was out there, but,
Why is it that murder is always the first option?
They go way out of the way. There's the clip on Jon Stewart a few years ago before he left, where this guy had a rifle and he was threatening to kill other people, kill himself, and the cop just walks up to the dude, sits down, talks to him. They talk him down. I remember watching on MSNBC, they had this thing, it was like best cop shoots, and this dude was threatening to kill himself, and they made, like, their sniper from way back aimed to hit the car so the bullet would bounce off the car and hit the gun away. It was one of the best shoots ever. And it's like, you went that far out of your way for him, but would you have done it if it was for me? But before we get too far into that, I want to make sure we give Armin a chance to speak. So how did you react to this week's...
I, as you know, David, I was a little reluctant to come on at first because being that I'm the only non-black guy at this, I guess, panel, and because I've been a pretty vocal critic of BLM, and I tend to give cops benefit of the doubt a lot, which so I wasn't exactly sure. I'm assuming you wanted me on because of that.
Yeah, I mean, because you don't really get anywhere if you just talk in an echo chamber.
So,
yeah.
First of all, I don't want to say that any of your feelings are fake or they're not validated or anything like that. I'm not saying that what you feel is wrong or anything, but I think it's important to understand the way these sorts of things play out and the way they build on each other. And the way we have a tendency to jump to conclusions before all the facts come in. So from the research I've done, because I did read up on this before coming here, in the case of the Alton Sterling thing, there was a 911 call that he was threatening a man with a homeless man with a gun, or somebody matching his description was threatening a man. So police came into that situation assuming that there was a active shooter situation, right? They're not coming in for a routine, okay, this guy shouldn't be here, kick him out. They're thinking, okay, there's a dangerous man over here. And from my understanding, they tried tasing him first, and it didn't work. Tasers sometimes do not work on overweight people because the current can't get through to the muscle layer. This is why a lot of people sometimes say, why don't they just tase them? Well, tasers don't always work. They're kind of finicky. Sometimes they do. But sometimes people can get tased and just sit there and take it, and then what do you do? So they tried tasing him. He didn't go down. Then they tackled him, and at some point, a police officer yelled, "He has a gun." The guy, one of the officers, pulled his pistol out, his service weapon out, pointed it at his head, said, "If you move, I'll shoot you." There was an expletive in there, but I'm not going to repeat it. And then, according to the officers, at that point he reached for his pocket. And in the aftermath, apparently a weapon was found in his pocket. Now, a lot of people are saying, who cares? You should have found a way to subdue him without it. He wouldn't have been able to draw. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, in that situation, things happen really quick. I've seen video after video of officers doing routine police stops, and then somebody just pulls out a gun and shoots them in the chest.
Did you see this video, though?
I did see this video. I watched this video, and the first time I saw it, it looked bad. I'm not going to say that was pretty. The thing is, generally, use of force is never pretty. It always looks horrible.
Well, I mean, if you look at the freeze frames, you'll see that the left and right hand were both, or left and right arm, rather.
Yeah, well, he was on his back, and there are better ways to control a suspect.
Well, I mean, like my
there's no way
question
for him to reach for anything is the whole point.
Well, my issue with them saying he has a gun, they were called because they said there was a suspect with a gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they should have rolled up, guns drawn, and say get on the ground rather than bring it to a hand. You're going to a situation with a gun, so the gun should not have been a surprise. They should have. That should have been like more than two cops show up kind of thing. You come, loudspeaker, far away, not get all close, and then, oh my God, there's a gun. Now we have to react. That story, something seemed off about that.
From what I've read, they did try to tell him to get down, and he was confused and didn't. A lot of times this happens where officers show up. They say, "Get on the ground, get on the ground," and the guy's like, "Well, what do I do?" And generally, I mean, this is the way the game works, unfortunately. If you don't follow a police officer's instructions, he will escalate. Usually,
Or if you do follow,
that's a good jumping off point to when you do listen.
When you do listen, of course, I'm not saying. Look, I'm not saying every single police encounter is perfect. I'm not saying that every single use of police force is justified by any stretch. My problem is this: it takes time for facts to come out. It takes time for investigation and research to be done. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is you have this 24-hour news cycle that's just looking for anything it can take to inflame passions, because I mean, I can go into this a lot, but news media today is not news, it's entertainment.
Right. Well, actually, to that point, how do you feel about them blasting a black man's face on TV the whole time this sniper situation's happening? Wasn't a suspect. The Dallas PD tweeted a picture of him saying this is a suspect. 6 different videos of 6 different angles show him actively handing his gun over to officers.
Well, I wouldn't blame the media for that, because they were given that picture.
Yeah,
I blame the police for that one, because they were told. But like with the media, like like you're saying, the more things suck, the more money they get. So it is in their financial interest to make sure people are upset.
Well, but what I'm also getting to is they were trying to inflame passions, like you said, from the non-Black Lives Movement, of having this black face with a rifle saying, this is our target.
Well, I'm assuming that well, here's the thing with the 24-hour news media is that essentially they grasp for anything, right? Like, whenever any of these situations, like, it can be a terrorist attack, it can be a mass shooting, it can be a contentious police shooting. You always have that initial report, and then, like, 3 hours later, it turns out everything that was in that initial report was totally wrong. And the reason they do that is because you have this 24-hour pump that you have to keep running. You take anything you can find without vetting it, and you just blast it on the television.
Yeah, but when Charleston Baptist Church was shot up, they didn't put some random's white guy's face on TV. When the Aurora shooting happened, they didn't put a random white guy's face on TV.
I imagine because they didn't have a picture. As soon as they had a picture of the
Oklahoma
suspect,
City bombing, they didn't put a face of a white guy up on TV, and there was just a sketch. They didn't they didn't just take a real live person and put him on TV.
Well, again, I'm not going to defend the news media.
Well, I know. I'm just saying there's obviously a disconnect.
I don't think there's a disconnect. I think what happened is the Dallas PD were trying to find out who the hell was shooting at them. They found a picture of a man armed at the protest where they were being shot at, and said, okay, look for this man, see if you can find him. Media picked that up and ran it, and that's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I do give the media a pass on this one, because they were told that by the cops. What should have happened, though, after it came out, was that the cops should have tried as hard as they did when they thought he was a suspect as when he wasn't.
The tweet's still out there.
Yeah, they should have taken the tweet down. They should have apologized. I didn't see the media covering that as much as they should have. I was watching again on MSNBC yesterday, and when they were talking about the man who was who they thought was a suspect, and they kept talking to one of the sheriffs saying, well, maybe we should rethink open carry laws. Like, well, no, that man was exercising his right. But the reporter kept trying to get him to say that they should revoke the rights, or that there was a problem, but they just kept going.
And I should point this out. I think one of the big tragedies here is the Dallas PD in particular has been known for being one of the more transparent and better run police departments in the country. They have some of the lowest complaints for unauthorized use of force or excessive use of force.
They have a great community program.
Yeah, and they're very well run, and there's a lot less corruption than in some of the bigger city police departments, and they did not deserve this.
No, but that being said, the places that the incidents did happen was Baton Rouge and Minnesota, not Dallas. And they really didn't deserve it. No one deserves to die, honestly, the way they did, the way this whole week has gone down. But it happened in Baton Rouge, which the South has a history of not caring for the lives of black people. And then in Minnesota, where you would think things might be better, but
there were only 2 black people in Minnesota, and one of them died a couple months ago, dude.
That's right. But you would think, there's only a few of them, so they can't all be like this
endangered species. Like, no, don't kill him. We only have one.
But the thing about it is, a lot of times we like to bring up, or not we, but the social media likes to bring up the past of these victims.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What
They
matters
act
is
like the past is on their T-shirt, saying, "Oh, I've done X, Y, and Z." You know, like, but
Right.
that's not what. But what were you doing then?
Well, my thing with that too is when George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin, one of the first things the police did and the media did was look up the criminal history, not of George Zimmerman, but of Trayvon Martin,
All right.
the victim.
To be fair, they did also post a picture of George Zimmerman's mugshot, juxtaposed with a photo of Trayvon Martin when he was a child. They also edited audio. I mean, look,
Well, no,
the
I
media
understand.
has a vested
No.
interest in creating these sorts of...
I'm not talking about the media on this one. The police looked up his criminal record. Why are you looking up the criminal record of a dead kid?
He's walking home.
Well, I'm presuming because police officers have to look at all angles and they're...
Of a dead person?
Sure.
Who was walking home?
there's only
Yeah.
one angle. The story played out as Zimmerman was following Trayvon. He was told not to.
Told not to by the
He
cops.
did anyways. He engaged. He got into an altercation with Trayvon. He was losing the fight. He pulled out a gun. He shoots him.
All right. And
Yeah, well, the thing is you have this 1 minute section where nobody actually... The only person who knows what happened...
Is alive.
Who's alive is Zimmerman. And that's the only question of whether or not what happened. But...
well, I mean, because like Zimmerman's life at no point was ever in danger.
Was actually in danger.
You have the truck, you have the gun, you have the advantage because you're the one approaching. It's like if I went out right now and hunted a tiger, and I don't come home because the tiger got me, who's in trouble? I mean, you know, like the tiger's like, I'm not gonna let you kill me.
You were
Unless,
active,
of course,
you were
Zimmerman's
actively
account
hunting.
is accurate, in which he's saying that Martin was on top of him, bashing his skull.
And that's
against
fine.
him.
In
But-
his
but,
back,
you know,
in
but-
his home area.
But he was being stalked
In his
by a
home.
man he's never seen before. A man who has a gun. A man who's been following him for however many blocks
South.
as he's on his way home with a drink and some Skittles.
And the kid's
And
not gonna lead him back to his
And
family.
just
even
like
18
he's
yet.
okay. Look, they say that Zimmerman had the right to defend himself with lethal force. At what point did this kid who was being stalked by some guy he's never seen before not have that same right?
Well, I would argue, from a self-defense law perspective, he had no right to approach Zimmerman to begin with.
He wasn't.
Why did Zimmerman
Zimmerman
approach
was
him?
approaching him.
Well, here's the thing. You have two versions of this story. One of the versions is that Zimmerman came up to him and an altercation broke out. The other version is that he approached Zimmerman and started an altercation. And if you look at timelines going back, Martin had plenty of opportunity to get to his home.
So did Zimmerman.
Are you going to lead someone who's stalking you back home?
Right, exactly. Like, 'cause remember.
That's
he's
the first thing I was taught as a
Yeah,
Call the
he's
police.
a- he's a-
Never,
he's a
if
kid.
someone's following
You don't go
I
home.
mean, hypothetically,
You don't drive
Someone
Okay.
did call the police.
home.
hypothetically speaking, if I were being followed by a strange guy and I could get to my house, right? I'd get to my house, I'd lock the door, and I'd call the police.
My family's not there. My little brother is.
Yeah, I mean,
Why,
you know,
and let them know where I live?
and let's not forget, he's a kid. We were all kids.
Mm-hmm.
When you're afraid, how clear was your thinking as a child?
as a
Now,
child.
but as a man, how much clearer is your thinking? You know, like, I remember first time I got pulled over. I told you all this before. You know, I was in my Honda Accord. I remember the cops. They pull up next to me, turn their head back because to look at me. They pulled me over. I was afraid. I don't remember how I got to where I was when I pulled over. After they left, it took me about 10 minutes to figure. I was over by your mother-in-law's house.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been there previous to that. When the cops left, I didn't know where I was. You know, now, you know, me being older, my thoughts are clearer. But now you take a 17-year-old kid who's visiting in Florida, which is the South, being followed by a white guy in a truck.
Latino guy.
He doesn't know that.
Doesn't know that though.
That's
Remember, you can only go by what the kid sees. And even
Hispanic,
even
non-white,
if he's
yeah.
Hispanic, Hispanics have problems with blacks too.
yeah.
So I mean, but either way, you got a guy following you. I'm not going home. I'm either going to try and lose you, or we going to solve this right here, because clearly this person, someone who is following you, has ill intent.
They want something from you.
They want something from you. You know, it's not like it was like a prize where he's like, I'm going to follow this guy, give him money. You know, I'm going to follow this guy because I think he's robbing something.
But regardless of what happened, there's a right and a wrong.
All right.
It was wrong for him to kill that kid.
Yeah.
Period. No matter what led up to that, that was the wrong.
And we've seen what kind of person he was.
That was the wrong decision to make.
Okay, and of course, I don't want to argue that Zimmerman's a good person, because I don't think he is. But if you were having, hypothetically here, if you were having your head bashed into a curb, right, and just takes one good hit, and that's it, permanent brain damage, you might die. Would you not reach for your weapon?
Oh, I understand why Zimmerman
I understand why he reached for
but
his
he
weapon.
put
He was getting his
himself
butt
in that
kicked.
situation.
Right.
He actively said, I want to go into this situation because I feel this kid is in the wrong. He got his butt kicked by a kid and resorted to pulling out a gun.
Only at the point where he felt his life was at
Because
risk.
he
curious.
decided to
In that
hunt
situation.
down
But
a
I'm curious.
kid.
But I'm curious though, if you were in that situation
Mhm.
and you see a African American or Latino kid walking in your neighborhood and he looks like he might not belong there,
Mhm.
would you pursue the same course of action that George Zimmerman did?
Probably not.
Right.
Because why?
It's none of my business.
Exactly.
I mean, unless
It's
I
none
saw
of his
somebody
business.
like hopping over the fence to my neighbor's yard, or it actually looked like
Right,
he
but
was
see, the thing is,
casing
so
a
that's
pen,
not-
Then you
that's
get a
not
gun
what
and
happened.
follow him, or would you just call the police?
I'd probably call the police.
Yeah, no, you would call the police. You wouldn't then go actively search
Right.
him out.
And the thing that's for Trayvon is that it was only because he was black and wearing a hoodie. I mean, and I'll tell you about when I was working for Enterprise, when they said, can I ask why you're in this neighborhood? Mm-hmm. It looks like you're casing the area. And I had a clipboard and a walkie-talkie. You know, so his only crime was that he was there, and someone who thought he didn't belong there also saw him.
The argument isn't that what George Zimmerman did in a survival situation was wrong. It was the fact that he pursued and it led to that is what's wrong.
Yeah.
But could you then look at the aftermath of what happened, right? Because I'm of the opinion that sometimes bad things happen and nobody's the villain, right? That things just balloon out of control.
No, that's true.
Yeah, and the aftermath of that case to me was kind of gross to watch, because you had media outlets going out of their way to create this very perfect story. You had people caught editing 911 tapes to make Zimmerman sound like he was racially profiling Martin when he was not. It was a phone conversation where he's on the phone, and they said, he said, I'm looking at this guy, he looks like he's up to no good. The operator says, can you tell me what he looks like? What's his race? He says, I think he's black, right? They cut out the question, right, to make it sound like he said he's up to no good, it looks like he's black.
I'm going to
Right.
be honest, I never listened to any of the recordings.
Well, and
I
you've
just know
already
the story. I know that Trayvon Martin was in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
Someone thought he was suspicious. They followed him. All of that stuff was irrelevant to me. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that he thought this person didn't belong in this area because he was a different ethnicity. He followed him, and the rest.
And
we know.
you've already explained about the 24-hour news cycle.
But here's the thing about Zimmerman is, in his past, he's taken actions that seem to suggest that he was not a racist. He defended a black homeless man who got abused by the son of a sheriff's deputy, and he went out there and he raised hell about it until this guy was brought to justice. So,
well, I mean, some people who say they're not racist can be racist, and they have their people that they think are the good ones.
Yeah.
I've been referred to in my life as, well, you're one of the good ones.
Yeah.
Where they pick their pet Negro.
You're
and
not
that's
like
the one
all
that-
the
yeah,
others.
you're not like all the others.
You're
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and so he
You
can
can-
pick
that's
somebody that
something-
he personally likes.
And that's something as I think all of us here go through a lot as black people who are educated. And I
Right.
did the
Air
air
quotes.
quotes.
Like, there was one time where me and Walter had a meeting with someone who will remain nameless, who was a producer, and we were meeting about one of our kids' books, and before he said hi, the first words out of his mouth were, "Holy crap, you're black."
As if black people couldn't be
he
writers.
He was surprised
you know?
that we were the faces behind the book.
And speak so well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You
And
speak so
well.
well. You're like they're like, wow, you're nerds, but you don't
that.
look like nerds. And I'm like,
he's so well spoken.
I think our agent said we look hip hop. Yeah.
And
because we're black.
But I mean, I guess my concern about this entire issue is unless I'm not trying to say that bad things don't happen. I'm not trying to say racism doesn't exist. These are, of course, silly things to say. I of course. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks that racism doesn't exist. I think there's a debate about how
there are
much
people
of,
who
well, then there is.
Yeah, no, there really are.
There are
yeah.
people who have this Pollyanna view of the world, and they really do actually believe.
Actually, I
no
talked
racism.
to one today. Yeah. So
But
it does.
I'm more concerned about what happens. I mean, I've been thinking a lot lately about social media and the sort of echo chambers that it creates, and how this might be at a time where you need to cool the temperature down, right? You know, you have a contentious shooting, not all the details are out, it looks bad, but you don't want to jump to conclusions. You want to cool that temperature down a little bit. And what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing it happen worse every single time, is that the temperature just skyrockets, and you have people actively, just jumping to conclusions, saying things that are not true, stereotyping people, making calls for violence or retaliation, and there's nobody out there saying, hey, calm down, we'll know the whole story in 6 months, okay? And then you can make a judgment. And even if you do make a judgment...
I'll be honest with you. The reason why it jumps so quickly is because we're tired. I mean,
yes.
Because because things have happened to black people since we got here.
1700s. That's
been just allowed. They used to have lynchings in the newspaper. They used to take home souvenirs and stuff. And it was a long time ago. But my family's only 4 generations out from slavery. My great grandmother is down as property in the books. We're not that far removed. So you have generations of being told, look down. Don't say anything. Say sir. Get off the street. All these
40
things.
years since we've been able to use the same restroom.
Well, end of Jim Crow was 1965.
Yeah.
My father was born in 1956.
I was born in 75.
My father was born in 1942. When he went to movie theaters with his cousin, my dad could pass. You see my father. He's kind of light skinned, and he went to the movies with his cousin. And they were let him in, but told his cousin, "You have to go upstairs." And my dad's like, "That's my cousin." Oh, okay. You get up there too.
Oh.
He was around during the time where there was the colored only sign, or no colors allowed stuff. So these attitudes, these feelings, these experiences, these stories are passed down, and you keep seeing that a little happens here and there, and then goes right back to normal. People are tired.
Yeah.
Generational burden.
And and combined with social media, which based on the algorithm does only feed you info that you want to see.
That is
and most people, because of how soft people are nowadays, they don't want to hear opposing views. Like on my Facebook feed, I have friends who think on either side of the issue, and I don't block people.
Same here.
So I'll see either Ashton or Cedric. I'll see things that you post, and then I'll see something that you or your brother post. I see both those things together, so my view is a little different, but most people don't have that, and so there's that. But the other part of it is they're tired of seeing things not being changed, and you can only go but for so long till the answer becomes violence.
I'm tired of these politicians marketing change but never produce change.
Because they don't work for us.
If I may interject, I don't think violence is ever the
answer.
We
understand why they say it. We don't condone it, but I get why you've been driven there.
I think here's the thing, though. I mean, a lot of people have been saying that race relations have gotten worse in the last few years. And so my question is, why now do we seem to have thrown this car in reverse and started going backwards? And my thing is, it's a combination of, you have political activists who don't seem to be particularly interested in the mission they claim to be interested in. You have social media creating echo chambers and feedback loops. So if you're subscribed to a channel that's devoted just to police brutality videos, and you just keep seeing police brutality videos on your feed, you're going to get a skewed impression of how the real world is. A great analogy I heard is if you watch shark attack videos all the time, you're going to get nervous about going in the ocean, even though you're more likely to be stung by a bee and killed by a bee sting than you are to be killed by a shark.
Well, my feeling on that is I'm not like afraid of it happening super often. I'm mad about the individual cases.
Yeah.
The ones that I see
think
on
that's
my
fine.
Facebook.
Not only the individual cases, but like I said, we're one generation away from Jim Crow, from legally being able to just string black people from trees and having picnics underneath them. One generation away.
And look, and then I'm from Tennessee, so it's not like even though all that wasn't legal anymore when I was growing up, it still was a threat for me. I mean, there's a city out there right now that I still can't go into because the KKK is sitting right there. And someone actually sent me into that city one day. I didn't realize I was there. It just so happened that the white guy whose house I was sent to didn't want to see me die. So he sent me away before they got there. The Klan was on their way. So it's not like this can't happen. But, and then, okay, again, being from the South, I have a different picture of a lot of this stuff. So I grew up with guns in an open carry state. Alton Sterling is an open carry state. And the cops show up, and maybe he's got a gun, maybe he doesn't. It's in his pocket. He's selling CDs. They actually, because it's an open carry state and they don't have any idea about who this guy is, have no right to attack him the way they did. The first thing they should have done was spoken to him. Hi, we got a call. We would like to talk to you. Would that be okay? Now, later on, they may find out this man shouldn't have had a gun or whatever and arrest him. That's fine. But the way they approached is completely wrong, specifically because at the time that this happened, he wasn't breaking any laws.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And
there is a problem with, and policing could be done much better in this country. And there's a lot of times where you have things happen where it doesn't have to escalate the way it escalates. A lot of it has to do with police departments being reluctant to fire cops that are incompetent.
Because they're contracts too.
Yeah, they're contracts, and then you have a very powerful police union that's not going to let that happen. And then you have, on top of that, a lot of cops are not particularly trained in hand-to-hand combat, which means if a suspect gets physical with them, immediately they have to go for the gun. They have no way to deal with it.
Can I ask you a question, Armin? Have you had a nightstick shoved in your back?
I've had a M4 shoved in my back.
I'm asking specifically about a nightstick shoved in your
No,
back.
I haven't
Okay.
had a nightstick.
You know a nightstick is a metal rod wrapped in rubber.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've had those shoved in my back. I don't even want to know what it feels like to take one upside the head, into the ribs, because it hurt with just having it shoved in my back when I got pulled over for not being in the right area.
Mm-hmm.
That hurts. You don't need to pull a gun when you can whack someone with a metal rod. You have pepper spray.
Well, ideally, you don't want to whack them with the rod either.
No, but you were saying like you have to go for that gun because you can't fight with your hands.
What I'm saying
I think
is
ultimately the argument is these police officers need to be better trained.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, they need to be trained in hand-to-hand
I remember watching this video and it was astonishing to me. So this guy walks into a McDonald's, right? He is high off his mind. I don't know what he was on, but his brain was baked, right? He walks in like shirtless, right? Barefoot, causing a scene.
It's probably PCP.
Probably. Completely out of his mind. Police show up to try to get him out of there, right? They try to muscle him out of there. He won't have it. He breaks away. They pull out the tasers. They hit him. Tasers don't work. Then they start like smacking this guy with the batons and nothing is working. And you're thinking to yourself, there's this half-hour, 45-minute ordeal going on where they're beating the crap out of this guy, trying to get him to get into handcuffs. And if any of these officers had some basic hand-to-hand training, they could muscle him into a pair of handcuffs.
But is that the norm?
Well, that's what I'm saying is...
Because the story out of the South was, we black men had superpowers. Mm-hmm. We had extra muscles in our legs. We could do extraordinary feats that white men couldn't do. In Michael Brown, in the court, in the grand jury, the officer said, I thought he was going to shrug off bullets. This myth of black superheroes because for whatever reason we can run faster, jump higher, shrug bullets off, whatever, exists. And that isn't the norm. I'm pretty sure he was, like you said, baked off his mind. And there are some drugs that you don't feel pain. You just whatever. It doesn't mean anything. And that's not the norm.
But I don't think it's training though. There are some things that cannot be trained. You know, it's like for special forces, yeah, they go through training, but at some level, that stuff was in them. When they were born, that training just brought it out.
Yeah.
But some people, most people, can never obtain the level. It's either in you or it's not. You know, like because we have the guy who was shot in his car.
Philando.
That's not training. You weren't threatened. You just did a thing because you were never, from the beginning of your life, good enough to have a badge. Simple as that. And I think what it is we're letting too many people pick up that badge and pick up a gun.
It's not strict enough. It's
Yeah.
not.
It's
not.
It needs to be like SEAL
enough.
level training where it's like, no, are you really
Here's
are
the
you
problem.
really good enough?
Here's the problem with that though. If you do that, I mean, cops are already grossly outnumbered. They're already like there are billboards where the LAPD is begging people to
True.
become cops.
True.
So if you turn around and you say, you know what, we are going to make sure that you are worthy of this badge. So we are going to make it difficult for you to get it. You just don't have enough cops.
Well, the big reason for why they don't have enough high quality is because of their pay. Like when I was getting my criminology degree, my mentor he was really involved with the government and law enforcement and federal law enforcement, which is why I was going down that path. And when he sat me down and I looked through, it's like, okay, so if you join with a degree, here's what you get. I'm like, that's $35,000. They're like, yeah. I'm like, you want me to get a degree and put my life on the line for $35,000?
Yeah.
So if the pay is that low, you're not getting winners.
Yeah.
You're not, because the ones who are that good, who do want to do law enforcement, they go to the FBI. They go to a federal law enforcement.
Yeah.
They go into the military. They go up the ranks. The people you get who are willing to put their life on the line potentially for $35,000, you're not getting a winner.
Well, then let's look at other examples. I mean, Britain's in an upheaval just with their own stuff right now, but their police officers for centuries have functioned without guns and have done fine. They have to put in a requisition to get a gun. So you don't have these people who are settling for a job, who are trying to feed their family, afraid because I'm barely getting paid, so I'm afraid for my life. They're not reaching for guns. They're reaching for weapons. They're reaching for backup. They're waiting for mass numbers to subdue one person. And there have been situations where they've had to use guns in Britain to subdue people. But it doesn't happen a lot. Because they have... Now, they do have stricter gun laws, so it's harder to get their hands on guns. But the police don't actively have this weapon of death constantly at their disposal. They don't have to automatically reach for that gun because they know there is no gun. I have to do something to de-escalate this to a point where we can take this man in. And we, as a black man in America, I see people de-escalated all the time that aren't black. They're flipping out, they got guns, they're throwing hands, they're kicking, they're screaming, and they de-escalate them. Man wants to kill himself. I'm gonna kill myself. They send in a robot with a cell phone and a pizza and talk him down from killing himself. They didn't send in the robot to push him. They didn't send the robot in to blow him up. They sent him a food and a way to talk to him to get him out of this situation. And if Philando Castile was doing everything he was supposed to do, why did Philando Castile have to de-escalate the police? Why did Alton Sterling have to de-escalate the police? They're the professionals. If I walk up to an MMA fight, if I walk up to Brock Lesnar, you're a punk, I'm going to kick your butt. He's going to laugh at me because he's a professional. He knows nothing I can do is going to work on him.
Mm-hmm.
And now, again, these professionals may not be the best. They may not be the most well-trained. But they're supposed to have they have experience in de-escalating situations. And I know for me, I don't want to have to be in a situation where all of a sudden I have to de-escalate a police officer because I'm not in the right area and I don't look like I belong. Just for that simple reason of I work in a very white neighborhood. I work in Simi Valley. It's very white. I'm afraid I'm going to get pulled over for driving while black because there's not a lot of black people out there. And I don't want to have to de-escalate someone because I don't look like I belong there, even though I work there, I have friends there, and go to church there.
And, you know, just to play off that, when I was a kid, I had this habit since I was probably about 5 years old. Because from about 5 years old, I would get into altercations with the white kids. So I started smiling all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got bigger, it became more important that there was a smile on my face all the time.
Yes.
Every time I looked at somebody, there had to be a big smile on my face. Didn't matter what I felt like. Didn't matter if somebody had just jumped me 5 seconds ago. When I was walking down the street, there had to be a smile because if some little white lady was walking towards me and I wasn't smiling, she felt threatened. I'm surrounded by police officers and I haven't done anything.
That's why a lot of us adapt humor.
Yeah,
it's because we have to consciously always be making sure everyone feels safe around us because of just I exist.
Yeah, well, actually, to piggyback what Walter said and what you said, David, my dad is a 6'6", 225-pound black man from Compton. He looked at me when I was 12 years old and 6 feet tall and said, "Cedric, you're a young black man. You need to smile. You need to say good morning. You need to say, how are you doing? To everyone. Because you will be looked at differently because you're a 6 foot tall black man in America. Smile." I got a nickname in high school as Smiling Cedric Harris because I was smiling all the time because, David, we went to the same school.
Yeah.
Private Christian white school, mostly white. You went to the same school, Armin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mostly white school. Smiling Cedric Harris because I don't smile, I'm an angry black man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point where we're not allowed to get angry.
No.
Because then that invalidates everything, and also we're a threat. You know, but back to the training thing. I mean, it really comes down to we need to screen people out more, and probably I would say pay them more.
Yeah.
Because that makes you less likely to make some backroom deals to steal stuff. But I mean, because we're getting the bottom of the barrel, and I mean, and there are a few, who are in the police departments who are really, really good people.
Yes.
Who are there regardless of the pay because they believe in it.
Yes.
But what we know about humanity is that is never the majority.
15, and there's going to be 15% of the people that try and do the best, 15% of the people that try and do the worst, and then 70% is everyone else.
Right. I believe there's an article written by a police officer. If I can find it, it was on Facebook. I saved the link. I'll put it in the description down below. But she said that, one thing she found while she was a cop was that 15% of the people were great cops. 15% had power trip issues. They had God complex issues. And the 70% that were left would do whatever they were influenced to do depending on who was around them. So if they were around good cops, they became good cops. If they were around bad cops, they became bad cops. Not because they truly believe, I hate black people. It's just most people are sheep. They follow. Yeah. Most people are followers. That's just humanity.
Well, why it's even more important to excise your departments of any problem officers.
The problem is, if the person who stands up and says something about it, they're faced with the fear, one day they might be out there, call for backup, and no one comes.
A woman just got suspended for speaking up.
Right.
Oh, she got suspended?
She got suspended.
Oh, wow.
Was it the woman who was speaking out?
Black woman.
And yes, a lot of departments have that attitude where it's like, don't make us look bad, and go along to get along.
I think she made him look good because the fact that I saw a cop who was that like that had felt that much passion, I was like, you know what? Because I was in a moment this week where I was like, screw all the cops. But when I saw that, I'm like, you know what? But some of them do feel this way. For me, that de-escalated me.
That
personally.
was for me. Like, I agree. That was an important video for me to see because it was like there are cops. Because I was the same way. I'm like, man, I don't want to go outside. I'm gonna get pulled over. I don't want to. This whole week was crazy, and then I saw the cop. I was like, okay, it was that dim light in a dark corner.
Right.
You know, then I was like, okay, there is some good out there. But then she got suspended for speaking up.
Right.
And it's like,
you don't embarrass the brotherhood.
Right.
And
no, not the blue line.
Which is the problem. Is that these cops who are bad get protected because they're part of the brotherhood. And then instead of taking them and standing them up in front of the nation and saying, you know what, this was wrong, we're not going to accept this, they get protected. They get pushed to the back. Something else happens and they hope you forget about it, and then they put them in front of an all-white jury, and then they go, hey, he shot a black dude who was really big and who might have had a gun. Oh, got away.
He was big and scary and black.
Now,
he might have had a gun.
Now, so basically, we all know this all sucks.
Yes.
Now, but what do we do going forward? So before we open up to us, Armin, you have the floor first. What do you think is the proper response to this week?
Well, maybe I can give some, I'll call it morbidly good news. And that is, I made a post, I don't know if you saw it, but I ran this by the numbers. Because really, you can see what you see on the news, you can see what you see on your Facebook feed, but that's all anecdotal. You need to actually go into the numbers and see what percentage of people are actually getting shot by police, what percentage of that are black, what percentage of that are white, and such. And I'm pulling the numbers from Washington Post, which has a great investigative study that they did, and they broke it down by category, race, where they were armed, unarmed, what they were armed with, how they were killed.
It's a great,
yeah.
Great
And so I just ran the numbers, and I mean, you can take this as some good news, but according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, there's about 62.9 million police-civilian interactions in the United States every year. That's a lot. You know, anytime a police officer talks to anybody, of that, 990 of them ended in lethal force being used for an arrest. That's 0.0016 of all encounters with police in the country.
In what year?
In 2015.
Okay.
And of course, now we're looking at, okay, of that number, how many people were shot who were black? Shot and killed. And obviously this number only goes for shot, so it can't take into account someone who was beaten to death or anything like that. But I think this is helpful still. And 258 people last year were shot who were black. Of the 258, 188 were using a deadly weapon, 29 were using a vehicle as a weapon, and 5 were brandishing toy weapons. That would be like the Tamir Rice case. 7 are unknown. So that leaves 38 people who were both black and unarmed when they were killed in 2015, which comes out to about 3.8% of all police shootings happen to people who are black and unarmed. And what's interesting about this is if you take the comparison for unarmed whites, it's 3.2%. So it's pretty damn close.
Except for the, can I just say the population? White people make up 70%.
Of course, and if you go to rates, that's a different story. But I'm going by total, so I'll make that clear for the podcast. I'm going by total numbers.
That's
entirely.
But with with it being that low, you've got to remember though that point, whatever percent is still some people gone.
Of course, I'm not saying that any of those people were acceptable deaths. Yeah. I'm just saying that perspective is important when it comes to these situations, because what I see happening is you have individual cases, which I'm all for people being upset about individual cases and saying, no, that is not okay. You cannot do that. That is not acceptable. What I have a problem with is taking those individual cases and creating this inference that paints the entire society as having this systematic problem that it may or may not actually have.
Well, can I counterpoint for a second?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. In America, 15 to 34-year-old black men are 9 times more likely to be killed by the police.
Mm-hmm.
9 times more likely, all right, than any other demographic. 15 to 34-year-old black men. 15 to 34-year-old black men only make up 2% of the entire population.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they make up 15% of all police killings. 2% of an entire population makes up 15% of the nation's police killings. And that's not a problem.
Well, here's where it's going to get uncomfortable. 15 to 34, right? 34% of that blacks between age of 15
and 34 years old, yes.
Also, unfortunately, happen to be more likely to be involved in criminal activity. Unfortunately, that's generally the age for all.
So, but my question for that is, so yeah, okay, so someone not, so I mean, if you out there thugging, that just comes with the territory.
Yes.
But I don't know if it was last year or the year before, with the Bundy Ranch incident,
mm-hmm.
where they always say, "Oh, he had a gun." No, these people literally had sniper rifles aimed on you. They were ready to go,
mm-hmm.
and they're like, all right, well, we're gonna turn around and
well, here's the thing about that. I mean, this is a completely different situation. I've heard that argument before, and here's the thing about that. When you have something like you had Waco and Ruby Ridge, which were these 2 horrific massacres that happened in the 90s, because the FBI and the ATF were trigger happy and decided to take a situation that was not violent and escalate it to the point where it turned out into an all-out firefight.
Like Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was in the 1920s, where you had
an entire town burned down because
razed to the ground.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is you had these high-profile mass attacks, and it ended up bolstering the militia movement in the United States. So it radicalized a bunch of people, and then eventually culminated in the Oklahoma City bombing with Timothy McVeigh, who openly said, "I was inspired because of what happened at Waco." And so now the FBI is a lot less likely to engage into a situation where it knows it's going to escalate completely out of control. The reason it's not a good comparison is because you're talking about individual street level crime versus a range war.
But I have a hard time thinking, like, let's say the cops roll into Compton,
mm-hmm.
and a bunch of Bloods and Crips or whatever who happens to be in the area nowadays, they all point guns out. By the time they go to act like they may be opening the consideration to pull their gun, they got holes all over the place.
No, yeah.
They don't care about a firefight when it's black people.
And they've driven tanks down Compton before. Let's
I'm
not
not
act like
exactly
that hasn't happened.
sure if that would happen that way. I mean, you're talking about a situation where you had an armed protest in the Bundy Ranch and then an armed protest in Oregon, right? Where you had just people standing there with guns not doing anything.
Pointing them at reporters.
But do you think black people could hold an armed protest? I don't think we could. They wouldn't. I mean, because they were out there for days. I do not think
almost a month.
We would get that far. They apparently would try drones because that's on the table now. I wouldn't put gassing out of the question. I mean, there's a lot of options for them to get people out, but they just let them sit. They just.
Well, no. Let's look at history though. Black protests in the South had dogs, hoses. Black protests got ran over by cavalry with sticks. Black protests have been set on fire.
All the while being vilified.
All the while being the bad guys, just for wanting to sit on the same bus or drink from the same fountain. White protest with guns. Now, because all these other protests were peaceful protests because they were in the civil rights movement. And unless you were with Malcolm X, MLK was like, no violence. But Bundy Ranch and in Oregon, groups of men with guns, like there were, 30, 50 guys there?
Ready to use them.
Ready to use them.
They didn't say we're out here just to have them. We're ready to use them.
2 to 5 were injured. None killed. Couple injured. Groups of men. They could de-escalate 50 grown men saying the government is wrong and I'm willing to fight for my right to be here, but they can't de-escalate 2 men in 2 different states with guns, legal or not. I don't know if they got any gun charges on these guys, but a whole groups of men.
It's a bad look.
Again, I have to reiterate, these are 2 different situations that have 2 different strategic and considerations.
And
on
I would say
hand,
it paints a mosaic picture. It takes a bunch of different pictures.
And this is why I'm trying to run the numbers here, is because I don't want this to be purely anecdotal, because again, it's the problem of the feedback loop that people get. If you're just checking your feed and seeing all these examples of brutality, it looks like a worse problem. And
if you don't fact check, yes.
And it results to real world destruction that ends up happening.
Yes.
I mean, this is the problem I've had with this ever since it started, is you have people inflaming passions, almost either intentionally or not, and then people go out and riot, and people's businesses get burned to the ground. People get hurt.
I think the big thing that I think would really do wonders for lowering these passions is if, when something like this happened, if people on the other side, if their first reaction wasn't to try and explain or justify or minimize or put in perspective, which because when you say, oh well, only 0.1 whatever percent, I mean, to us that's like you're trying to do anything other than admit, what, this thing sucked, and we got to figure out a way to make it better.
Yeah.
That when people keep seeing everyone try and rush to make it non-existent, that makes it worse.
Well, and when you say it's just a point, whatever the percentage number is, for us, for black men in America, Eric Garner could have been me. Yeah. Alton Sterling could have been Walter. Trayvon Martin could have been Ashton. Like, that's us.
Our number can be up at any time.
And when that number isn't a number and it's someone you know and love, that you talk to and know on a first name basis, it's no longer a number. And for us, this isn't a since 1965 problem. This isn't a 2000 since social media problem. This is a problem that goes back generations, because we know if we walk out that door, there's a small chance, however 0.00 small chance it may be, that we may not walk back because the color of our skin is distasteful to some people.
Yeah, and then a lot of these things also, like, each one of us has had a case where our skin was the reason why we were pulled over. And like, I was pulled over driving my son. He was 3, and when the cops approached me, like they looked at me from the side. They didn't pull up behind me or anything like that. They saw me. They were in the left turn lane. I pulled up beside them. I didn't look at them because I didn't want them to do anything. And I think that because I didn't look at them, that made them go, he looks suspicious. So they pulled over behind me and they pulled me over. And when they approached my car, they approached holding their guns. And when they asked me for license and registration, they put their fingers on the trigger. I noticed all of that because my life was in danger and I didn't have a choice. And my 3-year-old is sitting in the back seat. Yeah. I am the least threatening person on the planet with a 3-year-old boy in the back seat.
Right.
But I have to pay attention to all of that. And then, would you agree that history informs your present?
Sure.
Okay, so if my history is people that were my family members being hung from trees, crosses being burned in your front yard, my history is, as I have watched TV, I have seen a white kid kill 9 people and get a cheeseburger for it as a prize, but a black guy gets dragged down the street, he dies, and they tokenly put one guy in jail and let the others get away, or some cops beat a man down in the street, and then one guy loses his badge and the other ones get moved to another precinct. When my history is seeing that happen over and over and over again. Then when something like this happens and a guy who looks like he could have been me, he looks like he's about my size, he looks like he's about my height, he's hanging out in a place where it's okay for him to be, and he's selling things that are not illegal, and he's in an open carry state, and he's got a gun, but he's not brandishing it at anybody, and it cost him his life. That is us.
Yeah. And it's scary.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I told you all about when my mom got pulled over. I was 5 years old. We came back from Disneyland. It was right over here on Chase, and you know my mom got pulled over by a cop. He comes to the window with his gun drawn on a woman with her kid. Now, you know, I didn't know what was going on, and I woke up, and what hurt my mom was, because my mom worked at LAPD, I said, "Look, Mom, it's one of you." And she said, just go back to sleep, because she, I guess, didn't want me to learn it that young. But, you know, my mom works for LAPD and got that. You're not even safe if you in the family. You know, I mean, so it's, and like Walter said, that kind of stuff, these stories we have, they're anecdotal, but it's our life.
Yeah.
And every time something happens, every time we see lights go on, every time they drive by, that comes up. You feel a sense of dread. You're like, dang, if they pull me over, is this it?
Yeah.
Is this it?
It's for us, it's our history. We don't have a culture to look back on because we don't know where we come from.
All right.
With other races and other races, you guys have a culture to appreciate. Our culture can go back as far as 100 years. Some of us are lucky and we do know
where we were taken
Our
from.
culture is
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
sir, no, sir, Master, can I help you? And
Exactly.
please don't teach me how to read. You know, like that's like you know, it's like that's our past. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like our past is, you know, we all have whitish sounding last names. My last name is Clark. That is an Irish last name. Let us all think a little bit. How did I get the last name Clark? Walter, how'd you get Brian?
Well, I was owned by well, my relatives were owned by some Irish people.
Harris, Elledge, how'd y'all get those?
Indentured servant, because we were able to trace my history back to where my ancestor jumped off the ship because he said screw this and became an indentured servant for an Englishman. Right? So is it English? So yeah.
I have no clue.
Right. but these things, just how like in every other family, you know, how people say, you know, well, our great grandfather, you know, like the stories that our elders have to pass down to us aren't that great. You know, like my dad told me about his time in Vietnam. He was an officer. He couldn't go to the officers' lounge. You know, but if you grow up and these are the experience, like, yeah, you know, there are good stories. We have good times.
Yeah.
But you gotta take the good and the bad, and that bad, after hundreds of years, it adds up. I mean, unfortunately, we can't go that far back. We only have about 150 years, maybe,
a couple hundred,
and that. But you know, it's like,
And it's all here.
But
It's all here.
Most people, if you go back a few generations, have a lot of adversity in their background. I mean,
we have only adversity in our background.
my family is Armenian.
Right.
Right? So my great-grandparents were fleeing from Turkish soldiers trying to murder them. Before that, they were under Ottoman enslavement for centuries. Armenia was part of the Ottoman Empire. You know, on my father's side, my great-grandfather was living in fascist Italy. He had to flee. I mean, a lot of people have adversity in their past, and some of it is pretty atrocious. I mean, the Irish didn't exactly have the most fun time.
Very true.
And I don't know. I don't try to define myself by the stuff that happened to my ancestors. Possibly,
But you have the choice.
You have the choice.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
here in America, like everywhere else outside of this country, we are American. Here we're African American. Anywhere else in the world, when we walk up, are you an American? But here, we're African American. When the news comes on, if a white man gets shot and dies, a man died. If a black man gets shot and dies, an African American man or a black man died.
Yeah.
It's a completely different situation because we're here. We're not separate but equal. We're separate.
All right. And our ancestors didn't. There was nowhere to run because God forbid you got out. If they catch you, and they decided not to kill you,
just reference that scene from Django, and
they gonna cut your foot off.
Right?
If you're lucky.
Or hamstring you.
Right.
Cut your hamstring. You can't run. Mm-hmm. And by no means at all, and I'm trying to discount your family's heritage, Armin, but one key phrase I picked up on was flee. They had to flee fascist Italy. He had to flee from oppression.
He was able to get away.
Our ancestors were taken. Not once, but a few times, because once we got here, we got moved around and families got separated and tons of horrible stuff happened. But there was no option to flee. You were put on a boat and shackled, shipped across the ocean to a new land with new people and new languages. And where were you going to flee from then? There was no chance to flee.
Well, my family got lucky, and most Armenians ended up in death camps in the end.
Well, I'm lucky too with the indentured servant.
And what I'm trying to say is this: no one is arguing, of course, that slavery was not an evil. No one's arguing that racism is okay. No one is suggesting that officers have a right to kill with impunity. And, of course, everyone thinks Black Lives Matter. And anyone who argues the opposite is obviously not a moral person. From my perspective here, I'm trying to see what's the best thing for everyone involved. And one that prevents outbursts and violence and destruction spiraling out of control. And first, I mean, on the police officers' end, you obviously need better training. You need better screening in police departments. You need to have body cameras on every single officer. I do not know why this is in any way controversial.
They'll fall off.
They'll be dislodged.
In that case, there needs to be investigations as to how that happens.
Right.
There needs to be rules that say, look.
Yeah, there was one that scared me. I saw on today. It's from 5 months ago. It's on Facebook. Hopefully, I'll be able to link that one down below too. This guy was running from the cops, which he should not have been doing. That's stupid. You can't not gonna outrun him. No. But he's outrunning the cops, and then when he realized that, he's like, you know what, I'm dumb. So he got down on the ground and he put his hands above his head and he was face down on the ground. Mm-hmm. The cops roll up and start beating him. And they have a scene from the cops cam where they turn it off. And had it not been for the security cam, they would have.
Or the helicopter,
they would know.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, so we give you body cams and you just turn them off.
Well, then there needs to be a sort of, okay, why was your camera off? But there needs to be some kind, because dash cams have been great, right?
Yes.
And dash cams, from what I understand, are tamper-proof.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, they can't be.
Yes.
But they can't be pointed away.
And dash cams, of course, in many cases, are able to illuminate police brutality, but they also protect the officer.
Yes.
In case it turns out that the guy he's pulling over is actually
right. And for the record, because they always say black on black crime or when the black guy does something. When the black person is in the wrong, all four going to jail. And if you shot a cop, I'm cool. You got shot. You shouldn't have been shooting at a cop. It's the cases where it's like, no, where it's like the dude didn't do anything, or you could have done something different.
On the flip side. Right, so here's the opposite end. People need to. I try to avoid commenting on the specifics of a case until maybe 3-4 months afterwards, because a lot of information gets lost, and unfortunately, a lot of people get the initial news report and they don't come back to check in a month to see if anything's changed about what they.
Very true. A lot of people don't.
And I mean. And this is one of my problems. I was thinking about this here. This is one of my problems with Black Lives Matter as an activist organization. I have never heard Black Lives Matter say, oops, our bad. Right? In Ferguson, right? Michael Brown. his friend, Dorian Johnson, I believe, told a lie to the police, told a lie to the news. He said Michael Brown was on his knees, hands up, shot in the back of the head. Right? Later on, he admitted, I made that up. That's not what happened. And other witnesses came forward and said, yeah, no, that's not what happened. The autopsy report said that's not what happened. Ferguson got burned to the ground. People's lives were destroyed. I've never heard Black Lives Matter come out and say, sorry, our bad. Officer Wilson, sorry about that. We're sorry we ruined your career. We're sorry we ruined your life. Hey, business owners, largely black business owners, we're sorry we destroyed your livelihood. We're sorry we ruined your life savings. We'll try to do better next time. At a certain point, it's like, it's almost negligent levels of jumping to the conclusion, inflaming passions, turning up the broiler, and then eventually it will culminate in attacks like Dallas. Because you have, unfortunately, a very loud contingency of BLM that openly calls for violence against police officers.
Well, actually, going back to Ferguson, though, we talk about this vacuum that social media creates. The very next day in Baltimore and in Ferguson, Black Lives Matter activists and black people in the community and white people in the community, people from the community, the very next day went out and tried to tidy up the towns. Black Lives Matter is in Baltimore, Black Lives Matter in Ferguson. It did not make news. You had to find stuff out. You had to actively search for this information, because it's not news for the mass media that black people cleaned up their own neighborhood. I know because I was watching D. Ray McKenson on Periscope. I was watching Periscope of people cleaning up Baltimore. I was watching Twitter feeds of people cleaning up Ferguson. It happened.
And with that case, I do lay a lot of blame on that on the police, because they took too long to come out with the evidence. And because when you're not giving the answer, the way the human mind works is you're always going to go to the worst case scenario. That's why the waiting for something is always like if you hate getting a shot, right? And you're waiting in line, your mind is thinking, okay, if the needle's gonna go in, it's gonna destroy my arm, I'm gonna die. Like your mind goes to the worst case scenario. So if you take all this time to give people an answer, they're gonna think you're tampering with the evidence, you're changing things, you're trying to come up with a story, you're trying to lie. Now, whether or not what you do is a lie or not, because you took so long, it looks like you have something to hide.
Well, but that's the nature of police investigation. It takes 6 months to pull off an autopsy. It's not something you can do overnight.
Sometimes.
But we live in an instant society, and if you want to avoid people thinking that you're shady, you got to update with the times.
Michael Jackson was like a week on that autopsy.
Because he's accused of Prince of Pop.
No, because he was famous. If it's important enough,
if it's important,
it will get done.
Right. Most complete tox screenings, take a minimum of 3 to 6 months, depending on what they're looking for. And then, my point is this. People should be saying, look, hold off, okay? We're looking into it. And, of course, police departments can do a better job of this, saying, look, we're investigating the issue. He's been suspended. We'll get back to you, okay? There will be a grand jury. There will be a day in court.
No grand jury.
That's another problem within itself, too. Okay. Whether or not after everything is laid out on the table, the Alton Sterling case turns out to be his fault or whatever, whether or not it is, it looks bad. It starts out looking bad. So then putting someone on administrative leave and paying them, to us, looks bad. They're basically, as far as we can tell, just from the part of the video we've seen, because we haven't seen everything, and the video that might have shown everything has been confiscated and not being shown, right, which is a whole other problem. But the guy who, as far as we can tell, took someone's life unnecessarily gets to go home and get vacation time.
Right, and sometimes there'll be a GoFundMe that may or may not be people who support the Klan, who there'll be a GoFundMe, they'll get paid, and then in the meantime the media and the cops are putting out all this info on the victim, which is I consider it jury tampering, because who are you going to pull from? They've all seen this stuff, and they go, well, this guy did this or this guy did that. It just it makes them look bad.
All the more reason for the media to not pick these stories up and run wild with them.
But even if the media didn't pick them up and run with them, I know people who would take them and shove them until they got news media coverage. There were literally centuries of no mass media, and there were still black people running around like, we're not being treated right. Like, before mass media. Now mass media is coming up, and we're like, look, we're not lying. Right, it's here. We're telling the truth. It's on video. Look, Rodney King got his butt kicked on video. Yeah. Look, we're telling the truth. The cops they beat his butt in L.A. They had the trial in Simi Valley. Simi Valley has a population of blacks that is less than 5%. How is that a jury of Rodney King's peers? They consciously moved the trial to a place that was friendlier to white cops, even though they have video of police brutality. Like, we have evidence, but y'all still ain't listen. Look, more evidence.
Nowadays, you turn your Facebook feed on and you see a man get murdered twice a day.
In one.
I mean that's traumatizing to see that.
Yeah.
You asked a question earlier, and then we got into like 20 more minutes of talking about the problem. The question was, how are we going to fix this? Yeah. Okay. And really, honestly, I think that
2 hours later.
Really, honestly, I think that stuff like this is really the beginning of how we fix this anyway.
Yes.
I meet cops at my job all the time, and the guys I meet in the hospital when they're standing there and we're talking to them, they're people to me.
Yes.
They're not their uniform. They're not the flashing lights or whatever. They're actually human beings. And then when they talk to me, I'm not the big black dude who might kill them when they walk up to the car.
Yeah.
Like someone I met inside the hospital actually pulled me over, and I was wrong. I hadn't got my tags renewed yet. They pulled me over. They walked up and they said, "Hey, don't I know you from Cedars?" I was like, "Yeah, you sure do." They said, "Your tags are expired?" I was like, "Yes." And they said, "If we let you go, will you get them fixed tomorrow?" I said, "Yes," and they sent me home. That is how we start fixing this problem.
Yeah.
We have to actually have a better relationship with these cops. We have to have a better relationship, not with just the cops, with just everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to actually take the time to get to know the people who are around us.
Yeah.
White, black, Hispanic, Asian, everybody. We need to actually start knowing each other as people.
Yeah.
So that then when these things start to happen to us, that we're not just some random person on TV who has nothing to do with their lives. Hey, I'm that guy's neighbor. He knows me, and I'm a cool person, and why in the heck is this happening to me? Mm-hmm. Then it begins to get better.
It works here in Panorama. We had they've all been promoted now, but we had cops here in this area a few years ago that attended Panorama Baptist, our church, and they would come to our events and they'd attend services. And so when they'd be driving around, they'd see me walking around, wouldn't bother me, because I know his dad.
Yeah.
So I think like you're saying, having more events I think would be helpful.
I think there's something to that. I think very few people are so genuinely prejudiced that when they actually meet you on a face-to-face, when they actually know you, that prejudice usually shatters. And there's something to what you're saying. I think that's actually you're onto something here.
No, the community outreach programs is an indispensable thing they have at their disposal that doesn't get used enough. Because, instead of patrolling a neighborhood looking for someone doing drugs or selling drugs, why not patrol a neighborhood and teach about drug prevention? Mm-hmm. Pass out, talk to kids about staying off of drugs instead of looking to try and catch them doing drugs. But again, honestly, it really just comes down to just looking at each other and saying, you're David, you're Walter, you're Armin, you're a person. Your uniform color that you can't take off, that's just genetics taking over because there was sun exposed to melanin. You're a person. That's it. And when we don't look at people as people and like, oh, well, they're over there because that's the bad neighborhood and they're over there because blah, 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 and they're over there because blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we're all people. We all have hard times. And if we can just talk to people as people, it would start making relations in everything, not only police and people, but in business and everywhere better.
Well, I think what we should recognize is there are some police officers who do go out into their communities and
Mm-hmm.
participate. Like on Facebook, there's one super popular police officer named, I think I showed you the picture earlier, Tommy Norton, Officer Tommy Norton, in Arkansas. He goes out all the time.
Oh, the basketball one?
Yeah, the guy who plays basketball with
yeah.
him. He goes out and he talks to the kids.
Yes.
He's really active. And that, to me, is a public servant because at the end of the day, police officers, firefighters, all of these different institutions.
First responders.
First responders, yes.
Yeah.
They're public servants, and they need to be in the communities, and they need to understand the community. They should, just like that officer said on the video, the woman, you're a public servant. If you are racist or have any prejudice, then you should really reevaluate why you're wearing this badge and why you're protecting this community. You shouldn't be here. That's what I think. I think we should recognize that, though.
No, but unfortunately, we don't. That's not a story that gets pushed because that's not selling stuff. It's on,
and that goes back to what Armin was saying earlier. That the media screws things.
There's a few people that will push it forward, and then it gets lost amongst everything else.
We need to find a way to protect those good cops who, because like I said earlier, the ones that do stick up, the ones that do say what's right, sometimes there's a backlash, and then the majority of the cops who are just sort of blank slates see that, get afraid, and don't say anything.
Yeah.
But there needs to be some way that civilians can protect the good cops.
Yes.
Yeah, and then also we have to take responsibility for the types of news that we all put out ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you paid any attention on my Facebook. If you were watching my Facebook,
Rainbow and puppies.
But on Wednesday, when Alton Sterling happened, I was pissed off, and I posted all kinds of stuff about Alton Sterling. And then that night when Philando
Castile
happened, I started posting all that stuff. Then on Thursday, when those cops got shot, I posted that, and I was like, what the heck is wrong with us? And then I started posting things about cops in their communities doing good works and stuff like that, because it's like, I just realized that as I was getting angrier and angrier, I was perpetuating a certain type of view of the cops. And then it was making people, one, think that I saw cops that way. But two, it was also anyone who may be on the fence about the way they felt about police officers, now I'm pushing them to the other side of that fence. So I was like, okay, there needs to also be some kind of a balance. Yes, this sucked, but this isn't every cop. It's not even the majority of the cops. It's a particular set of cops.
Yeah.
And now they happen to be the ones who are the most visible. But that's not all the police officers out there.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that. And we also need to take responsibility for how we present them and ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think because it's not all cops, and it's not all any one group of people, and I think when that's the case, then we have to look at the system in which these people operate, because I feel there's something wrong when, if I take your wallet, there's going to be a trial about me taking someone's wallet. But if a public servant hurts, rapes, kills, murders a civilian, maybe there's a trial. Maybe sometimes it doesn't get past a grand jury if it sees a grand jury, and we always talks about checks and balances with the president and the politicians. Why can't we have checks and balances when it comes to the people that interact with us most? I mean, I had a post where I likened school teachers. School teachers are public servants. If they mess up, they get punished. If a teacher rapes a student, they get in trouble. They go to jail. But if a police officer does something to a civilian, there's not as many checks and balances to keep them honest. You know, in schools they have mandatory reporters and stuff like that, but if someone reports on the police, like, again, that the officer we keep bringing up, they get shunned for doing what we teach other professions is the right thing to do. Other public servants is the right thing to do. Speak up once you don't see something right.
The blue wall is very strong.
It is a very thick line. Yes.
And that's a matter of demanding competence from your political leaders and a
Yeah, more checks
Which
and balances
believes-
for everyone.
Which believes we will be taught.
an
That's a
uphill
Yeah.
is an uphill battle as
That's
any.
another 2
That's
hours.
a whole nother
yeah,
conversation.
I
for
like to
another
think
time.
it's not always doom and gloom. When the issue is not contentious, I like to think that the system generally works. I remember the case in Charlotte where that officer shot the man in the back as he was running. I think almost instantly that guy was on trial for first degree. I'm not sure if the trial's over or if he was convicted, but first degree murder. I mean, that's you could get a death penalty for that.
You know, we've had cases in LA, I think Holtz Claw and a few other cops who were convicted of rape of people. Like, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like we're talking about the extremes, the every, like,
The ones you just can't ignore.
the
Right.
ones you can't ignore. Like, because Michael Brown honestly kind of got swept under the rug because there was a grand jury and nothing. And then it wasn't news anymore until another black man was killed, and then there was a grand jury, and then nothing. And it's like, well, and then there's that you were talking about that kettle, and it just keeps boiling, and it's
Yeah.
it's.
I mean,
But you
there-
also want to be careful. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
problem.
to- You also want to be careful not to use people as sacrificial lambs, just to appease a mob. If
Yeah.
an officer is innocent, if he didn't do anything wrong, he shouldn't be dragged through a trial process if there's no evidence that would convict him.
Well, my only thing with that is, how do we even know if he did anything wrong if we can't sit him down and have him cross-examined? Because in a grand jury, there's a light cross-examination, but you're mostly sitting in front of a bunch of people that they're like, well, maybe
I mean, it's harsh,
generally
but
the
the power
grand
of
jury
life and death
decides
comes with a
whether
lot
it's
of-
even worth taking to trial because the prosecutor comes out and says, "Here's my, best case for why we should take this to trial and why I can convict him."
well, and there's a lot less rules in, but
Yeah,
like David
and
was
essentially
saying,
they can do whatever they want.
yeah, but when you have the power of life and death in your hands, the president of our nation, the leader, chief and commander, has been blasted for using drones. You don't know what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. And people want to constantly get on him. But we have people walking around with guns with that same power to take life or death. And we're not holding them, I believe, to a high enough standard. If you have the power to take someone's life, you should be able to value said life. And the taser test. You guys familiar with the taser test with officers?
Well, they
have
take
to-
each other.
You have to get tased
Mhm.
in order to carry one, because you need to know what you're doing to someone. You can't do that with a real gun. And I think when it comes when it comes to Black Lives Matter, that's what it's trying to say. It's not we're trying to incite violence against people. It's not that we're trying to incite anger. We're trying to say, have value for that life also, because it is a life.
Yeah, and then like with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, it's weird. I was having a long conversation with on Facebook this morning with a bunch of Caucasians I don't know. It was actually really cathartic for me because getting a chance to hear from people I don't know,
Yeah.
who aren't particularly like-minded with me because they don't care about my feelings, so they're just going to tell me what they think.
Yeah.
So we were having this conversation, and they were asking me about Black Lives Matter, and I was telling them that one of the things that you have to realize about Black Lives Matter is, when you say all lives matter, the problem with that is, I don't know when you ever felt like you didn't matter. I feel like I don't matter all the time. I feel like when I'm walking down the street, if there's a white guy over there and I'm over here and a shooter comes out with 2 guns and he says, I'm going to shoot one of them, and there's one cop and he has to make a choice, he's going to go protect the white guy. I'm always going to feel like that until someone proves to me that it's different.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is whenever you counter Black Lives Matter with all lives matter, you've missed the point.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying Black lives only matter. I'm saying Black lives matter too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like we said, we've gone over before, there was a time they didn't. Our government literally said, you're 3/5 of a person. I'm a history buff. I don't know when in the history of humanity, recorded history of humanity, we've looked at a group of people and said, you're part of a person.
Though, it's actually for the best that they did that. You know why they did that, right?
I know why they did that, because the people in the South were like, I don't want the blacks to vote. And if you give them full rights as a person, they're going to be able to vote and end this. Very profitable.
Well, the reason was, here's what was happening, was when it came to censuses.
But regardless of the legality of it, is it okay to say you're only 3/5 of a person?
I'm going to defend it on the basis that I think the northern states were actually smart about this.
Any closing arguments?
In closing arguments, yes. We're going to get into a little bit of a history lesson. I know we're getting a little off tangent here, but
it's a whole other show.
We're definitely going to be...
We'll do 3/5 compromise in our day.
This is going to be a continuing series, hopefully on a weekly or every other week kind of basis. But we're definitely going to be doing it. I hope all of you guys do come back because this was like you said, cathartic.
Yeah.
Fun, and definitely something that I think is useful.
Maybe at an earlier time.
Yeah.
Preferably.
Well,
we are recording this kind of late.
This is recorded late because we're not going to look at them directly. Cedric Harris.
I was making that money at work.
Right. But no, we're going to talk about topics, ranging from, the 3/5 compromise and, all the way up to,
It's a lighter subject.
Lighter subjects like how to change the black community, which is, I'm sure, it's going to be easy.
Love to do
and fun.
Politics, because the election's coming up.
Of course, that's going to be also
a big
interesting.
thing.
So it's going to be a lot of things. So please stay tuned. Subscribe to Educated Black Men. Hopefully, Armin, you'll come back. We didn't kill you. You are alive.
Where's the sword? We still have time.
I put the sword back in the house because it's brand new.
Is there a lightsaber?
There's a lightsaber in the room.
Where's my?
I mean, you'll have to change the name of the show if I become a consistent thing. It's going to be a little
Educated
weird.
Black Men and one Armenian.
Does that mean
Subtitle.
does that make me the token white guy?
Yes, it
That's
does.
a weird
Token
place to be
Armenian.
in.
We're gonna call you Token from now on. But
Educated Black Man with Armin.
right, exactly. So got to change the banner.
Hey, bro, look, for real. I enjoyed having you here, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate
yes,
talking to
thank you.
Yeah,
It
a
wasn't as
lot
bad
of
as I
respect.
thought it'd be.
But no, definitely. I definitely respect that you were you had the bravery to do it. And,
Yes.
And there's a reason why I selected you. I know some other people that I know wouldn't have been able to handle it, and they would have immediately started yelling and accusing everybody. So I definitely appreciate it. So.
And this is the part where I pass the money over to him because he's just
Right.
promoting me, right? Just keep complimenting me,
Right.
David.
He only bought you for $15.
Yeah, look, I really need a milkshake.
Could bought me
That's
for
what
a
it is.
cheeseburger because I'm hungry right now. So.
Right.
That's only
But-
6 things at McDonald's, David.
I know. It's getting expensive out here.
And it used to be a box with all the 4 burgers and 4
We gonna talk about how expensive
McDonald's
is too.
is.
That's gonna be a whole other video. Everything won't be doom and gloom. But thank you guys for listening. Until next time, I've been David Clark.
Walter Bryant.
Ashton Elledge.
Cedric Harris.
And Armand Gasparini.
See you later, guys.